Any other? Okay. All right, members, let's see. We've got our business done with for today. We have the next meeting set for October.
Lead scientist report?
Pardon?
Isn't there's another agenda item, I believe.
Which? You were absolutely right. I apologize for that. The lead scientist report. Okay, well, let's clear up this. We've got undoubtedly the report back, either the third draft Delta plan or a report on status of the third draft in the October meeting, which is, I think, the 24th or the 25th. I forget what day it is. We know that. Don will unfortunately be gone, but we'll have our new member then on that issue. I think that's the follow-up we need. Members, on your desk is the printed final copy of the draft Delta plan. Now, this is the one with all the appendix contained within it. Okay, there'll be subsequent copies of executive summaries and a CD of the appendix or some darn thing, whatever it is, that'll be coming out. But this hit the street yesterday, I think.
Okay. Is it on Netflix yet? YouTube.
God.
Real hard.
Yes, right. Okay, Dr. Goodwin, you have just returned from a trip to foreign lands, namely China.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll make this report very brief this time. Yes, so I had an invitation to visit China. I was actually the vice chair of the Scientific Steering Committee for the IHR World Congress earlier in September. And several things happened there. It was an opportunity to actually talk about what you're doing here in the Delta Stewardship Council. And that was very well received. There was a lot of interest. But there were two things in particular I thought you might be interested in. Around this meeting that occurs every 2 years, there's sub-meetings always go on. And they had 7 international water organizations present that actually flew in along with the United Nations, and they signed a cooperative agreement to collaborate on what they call global water security.
But it's global what?
Global water security, which essentially in their jargon means the co-equal goals. That they're looking at reliability of water supply, particularly focused on these very large systems in the face of climate change. As a local comment, the head person for the United Nations was Dr. Kalonji, who her previous job was in the president of the University of California office in Oakland. And she's just a wonderful woman, and so was very interested in what you're doing. So there may well be some issues out there that we can, or initiatives that we will be able to participate in the coming years. Also around that meeting there was a biennial meeting where the directors of the National Water Institutes get together to talk about a range of issues. And one of the ideas that we floated, and I think Mr. Fiorini and Chair Eisenberg and Hank Nordoff have all expressed an interest on these really big systems around the world. Not so much from the academic point of view, it's easy to move students and professors around, but how do you get this exchange of information at the policy and senior agency people making decisions? So the group actually discussed that at length, and there was a fair amount of support for it. So they set up a subgroup to investigate things like potential funding, what it might look like. So I don't know if anything will come from it, but I'll obviously keep you informed. My guess is in the US there's unlikely to be funding in the foreseeable future, but if the UN or someone's to you put some funding in, it would certainly be nice to host as well as have our folks move around. Second item on here is the covered actions training. Delta Science Program provided support to the council staff in the training sessions for the new regulatory requirements. We discussed best available science, adaptive management, and responded to questions from the various agencies. The third item I want to draw your attention to, and in terms of the mechanisms that can be used to address complex science issues, we have 2 upcoming programs. Our annual long-term Operation Biological Opinions Review is November 6th to the 7th. And then we're also assisting the State Water Resources Control Board on November the 12th to the 14th.
Dr. Goodwin, I know that the Water Board was a request to us to help organize the workshop. Refresh my memory again on the BIOPS thing. We've done this a number of times, but that flowed from which agency request, or was it our own evaluation? I just don't remember. I used to know the history. Sam may know.
Buttons to test. Okay, can you hear me? It's a request. We've done this to be the third or fourth time. It's actually a requirement in the NIMS biological opinion that they do an annual review, and then to be a little more efficient, we folded in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Their
Members, this is an illustration of that. We do peer reviews by request. We do studies and hearings and workshops by request, and get into some very complicated scientific things, I think. Okay, thank you, Sam. That refreshes my memory.
And of course, the procedures that are used for these are described in the science plan. The one thing that isn't actually in the lead scientist report, and I'm remiss for doing this, is on October the 29th to the 30th, there's the state of the estuary conference will be underway. Certainly would invite any council member and any members of the public who would like to attend.
Mr. Fiorini is on a panel or speaking. I forget what.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I was going to say the highlight of the conference was going to be...
I wasn't going to say that.
But actually, we'd like to thank the conference organizers, because we actually have a sequence. We have Mr. Fiorini speaking. We then have a presentation on the science plan, and then we have a roundtable open meeting to actually discuss some of the big issues facing, some of the barriers, some of the opportunities facing science.
This is the second version of what you set up last year. What did you call it, a public forum? No, it's a...
That was a town hall meeting.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so yes, that model seemed to be successful. So
the town hall, you called it
the
town hall.
That's the town hall.
Yeah.
And then the very final item is, Emily, if you wanted to come and give us, you buy the numbers. And Emily, of course, is one of our state fellows and just does a great job with this kind of thing.
I know you're not Lauren Hastings, although you're sitting in front of her name. Thank you. Good. Yes, I think we can.
So, very briefly, since it's the end of the day, we took your comments, Chair Eisenberg, to heart about...
Red button?
Red button? Okay. So now you can hear me. That sounds like I'm on. Okay, so we took your comments about making these numbers a little more just easily understandable instead of just throwing an index at you, which is not very telling of how what that might mean. As you'll like, one of the first numbers here is the summer tow net smelt abundance index, which we put on last time and actually sparked the discussion. And we've put a rating of poor on it, because while it is good since the 2000 in the pod regime, in the long term, it's not where you want to see these numbers. They used to be in the hundreds.
Well, I want to congratulate you for doing this, because this is the first start of what is an understandable performance measure. And, these may or may not be the right ultimate choices we make on a particular measure, but at least it tries to put in understandable terms the scientific information that's available. And I think the only judgmental part of this are the colors of the circles, and that depends on whatever tests or measures or standards you have. But I would urge you to keep up this and play around with it a little bit, because over time this will help us understand what's going on. And to the extent the public has any discussion, it tends to be what happened yesterday is history, what happens today is today, and what happens tomorrow is unknown, which is useless information. This is the start of something helpful.
Yeah, that's what we were hoping for.
Good.
I really like it too. One of the things I like is it just mixes fish numbers with water supply numbers, so it's sort of suggests
essentially doing
we have
co-equal gold in visual terms.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. You can't just look at one without seeing the other.
I'm glad. I'm glad that this is doing well. I guess I'll just point out a couple numbers, maybe. This past, or since the beginning of September, and really this past weekend, we had a lot of rain, and it was 1.7 inches in all of Northern Sierra precipitation gauges. So that bumped up the Northern Sierra precipitation.
By
One of
the
the
way,
first
there's
numbers.
no color circle in that box.
Oh, that's because it's not a judge. It's like a fun fact. How do you? Is it? I guess it's good that we had a lot of rain.
Well, one of the things I'm interested in, you've done three of these.
I've
now.
done all of them.
All of them. Okay. Did anything surprise you on this summary?
I would say probably the bottom, the Chinook salmon numbers. It comes from a report that came out from IEP, and
Right.
the last year's escapement, which basically means like the returns of salmon, was 120% of average, which is great. And this year's winter run, while we rated it as fair, it's the best since 2006.
Yeah. I mean,
So
raises two questions. For professionals like yourself who look at this stuff, if there's anything that causes you to say, that's interesting, it's likely something you might want to tell us about. And the second is the need over a relatively short period of time for longitudinal information, so we can put the year to year or every 6 months in context.
Mm-hmm.
So this it's terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Okay. Any other business to come before the council? Judge Jamrell? No. Okay. Don, we're going to miss you.
Likewise, express my thanks to all of you. Thanks, Phil.
Okay, meeting is adjourned.